Brittany here from Teach Here, thereanywhere.com, and on this channel you will find videos for teachers and for parents who are looking to make extra money or to inspire their children and students from here to anywhere around the world. So today we are going to start out, and one of the most common questions that I get is, how do I manage my students on Outschool? Okay, so it is very different managing a group of online students versus if you were in the brick-and-mortar classroom where you have a discipline system going on, and then if it gets really bad, you call the principal in. Okay. If you think about an ESL online classroom like VIPKid where I work, you're one-on-one, and if you have an issue, there's the fireman that you can at least call, and there's the policy where you can just end class. But at Outschool, it's different because you don't just have one student, and there's not that fireman to call when that behavior starts going on, and the policy that you can just leave class and then handle it later. You don't have that option. You are the teacher, and it is your business that you are trying to figure out how to do. Okay? And that parent can give you a bad review. So, what do I do? Well, these are the steps I do to kind of avoid student behavior issues. And I'm going to start out by kind of giving you 10 tips that you can do. That first tip is to greet your students and make that rapport with the students. A student is less likely to misbehave when you have already established that relationship in that positive way before you have began your classes, okay? So that is tip number 1. Greet your students and get to know them in some way, whether it's through a would you rather question or where are you from? Where are you in the world is the question that I would ask, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my expectations in class. You have to set those expectations. So if you want everyone to remain muted, you need to tell them, my expectations are for this class is you remain muted until you're called on to speak, that you raise your hands if you would like to speak, that your camera remains on at all times, and you respect each other by using kind words and listening to others speak. If you are deciding not to follow these guidelines, and you are not following these policies, you will be removed from the class. Okay, so those are the things. Now, those are my expectations. They're pretty high, but it also helps them to know, oh, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to be removed from the class. Now, those are for really what I expect. When you have more than one learner in the class, if your students do not remain muted, it becomes chaos. At least it seems like chaos. And though that student has gotten used to that background noise, this other student has not. And it may be that they, have issues with a lot of sound going on, okay? So, set your expectations. Number 3. Keep your students engaged. If your students are starting wiggling around, that doesn't mean they're misbehaving. Maybe they just need to get up and moving. Maybe they need to just do something, and you need to break from what you're doing and get them moving if your class is very much more of the lecture discussion. One way to use this is using like a spinner, and then you would spin that spinner and it would have an activity for them to do, and it would get them moving. So that is one way I do when they're just having the wiggles, then I do it. Another thing I have is I use dice, these dry erase dice, and I put some different things, and that helps as well. Okay, so keep your students engaged, whether that means even just doing a movement break real quick. Okay. The next thing I do is using students' names and allowing them all to participate. So don't just let that one student monopolize the class. Really make sure that you are going, hey, Anna, what do you think about this? Hey, Patrick, what do you think about this? And giving each student a chance to answer. Okay? The other thing I do is if there is a misbehavior, I always, on my chat, allow for the the kid to talk to the host and the host to contact the students, okay? So that is the one thing that I do in the classroom. So that way, if they're having trouble, we have a way to communicate without every single person in the classroom knowing what it is. Or like the other day, I sent, I need you to turn on your camera to a couple of students. And I was able to just deal with that student without everyone else in the class hearing what's going on. Okay, now, I like to keep it sometimes even muted but the student can still be interacting. So keep your students giving you thumbs up, thumbs down. Oh, for A, give me 1, B, give me 2, C, give me 3, or D, give me 4. And that way, the students are still interacting even if they might not be talking. Okay, sound good. So that's number 7 that I have. Oh, that should be number 6. Okay, number 7, always have more material than you think. Remember, some classes might be smaller, so you might need more material for those classes that are smaller, or that kid that's not really that interested in what you're doing, but they're there, and so they don't ask as many questions, and they're not interacting as much. You need to figure out a way to fill in that time after your content that you would schedule finished. So make sure you do that. Another way that I keep kids engaged, which helps manage the classroom behavior, is to have kids annotate on the screen. Now, some kids don't have this ability if they're on a mobile app or things like that. So you need to make sure that you have a way for all kids to be involved, even if they can't annotate on the screen. Okay? Keep that in mind. They love being the teachers. They love giving that, the ability to do those things. And it really does help them to stay engaged and not having bad behavior. Now, 9. If you realize that the class is too long, you can't change it then. You have to finish. I would finish that whole 30 minutes if you said it was going to be 30 minutes, or that whole 45 minutes if it was going to be 45 minutes. But you can change the time on future classes. Maybe you've already had students go ahead and register for that class. Maybe you go ahead and refund them $1. Say, hey, I had to change the time of this class. The class is now going to be this amount of money and I'm refunding you this $1. Or whatever you want to do with that. But definitely, if you change it in length, you want to make sure that if you're changing price, that you do. That's how I would run my business. But that's up to you on how you run your business. Okay? So go ahead and do that. The other thing, number 11, is to not allow students to change their names. So on Zoom, you can put, there's a way to not allow students to change their names. Recommend it because you might want to be able to change their names because maybe you have 2 students that paid, but they're on the same computer because they're brother and sister, and that is allowed. Now, if there's somebody who has not paid, but they're sitting in your class, that's not allowed, but you want to be able to go, hey, both of these students are in here. So you want to have that ability to add both students. But don't allow your students to be changing their names because then they get distracted and then they're not focused. If you really have a misbehavior, and I haven't ever had to come to this point, you can remove a student from your classroom. It should only be as a last resort. When you kick that student out of the classroom or remove them from the classroom, they're going to see a blank screen that's saying, waiting for host to let you back in. Now, please be careful because remember, you do own a business. And unlike a teacher in a brick-and-mortar classroom, that parent may be really upset with how you handled it, and now you have a bad review. And so you've got to figure out the best way. And I think the best way is being preventative, where you're doing all of these things and keeping them engaged so they want to be in your class. So those are my top tips for management behavior in the online classroom. I hope this has given you some ideas if you have some of those students or you're trying to prepare for maybe some of those more challenging students. Just remember that all students are students. They are eager to learn and they want to learn, but they want to also feel important. And they want to feel like they're not, that they are someone that actually matters. They don't want to just be another student that you're checking off your list. Oh, you're hello class. They don't want to just be part of a group. They want to be an individual as well. Okay, awesome. I hope this helped you. If you have any more questions, join me over at my blog at teachherethereanywhere.com or email me at teachherethereanywhere@gmail.com or just message below. Let me know if you have some tips for classroom management down below. Bye, friends.